On the afternoon of November 26, 1943, off the coast of Algeria, a convoy of Allied ships carrying thousands of troops and supplies bound for Bizerte, Tunisia, was suddenly ambushed by nearly 30 German bombers. In two distinct waves, the Luftwaffe unleashed a torrent of bombs. Thanks to anti-aircraft fire, radio jamming, and maneuvering by the convoy's captains, not a single bomb hit its target. Until one did. In 1925, British India Line ordered two new ships to be built to serve as passenger cargo vessels. SS Rohna, named after a town in Punjab, India, was completed on November 5th of the following year in Tyneside, northern England, by R&W Hawthorne, Leslie and Company. After serving the British India Line for years, shipping primarily between Madras, Nagapattinam, and Singapore, the outbreak of World War II caused the British Admiralty to requisition the ship in May of 1940. Renamed His Majesty's Transport Rohna, or HMT Rohna, it was converted into a troop ship with less luxurious accommodations, but more practical wartime features, such as anti-aircraft weapons and additional cargo holds to meet the needs of military transport. HMT Rohna's first voyage as a troop ship began shortly after her requisition on June 6, 1940, carrying troops and cargo from Bombay to the port of Durban in South Africa. Over the next 3 years, she would make frequent trips between Europe and North Africa. During the most deadly and destructive war in human history, the Mediterranean Sea became one of the most treacherous places to navigate. This vital body of water connected Europe to Africa, and controlling it was crucial for both the Allied and Axis powers. Shipping vessels in the Mediterranean were constantly at risk of U-boat attacks, air raids, minefields, and naval battles. The stakes were high, and both sides remained on high alert in these dangerous waters. To protect their fleets, troop ships like HMT Rohna often traveled in convoys, groups of ships sailing together for safety. These convoys were typically escorted by the Royal Navy or other Allied warships designed to defend against the constant threat posed by the enemy. By this time in the war, the Germans had developed sophisticated technologies and maritime tactics that still left the merchant ships very vulnerable. One of these wartime innovations was the Henschel HS-293, a guided glide bomb designed to be launched from aerial bombers, then directed towards its target using radio control from the pilot or a dedicated operator inside the plane. The explosive was equipped with a small rocket engine to extend its range and help it glide towards enemy ships. The pilot or operator used a visual targeting system to guide the bomb, but it was vulnerable to interference and required a clear line of sight to be effective. At approximately 12:30 on November the 25th, 1943, the Rohna, along with 4 other troop ships, departed from Oran in French Algeria. 3 hours later, they joined convoy KMF-26, which was en route from Britain to Alexandria. The following day at around 4:30 p.m., while off the coast of Bougie, Algeria, the convoy came under attack by 14 German Heinkel HE-177A heavy bombers. The convoy had minimal air cover, just 4 Free French Spitfires, and later some British Spitfires were there to protect them in the air. The Luftwaffe planes launched many of the previously mentioned guided glide bombs towards the convoy with little success due to smokescreens, maneuvering, radio jamming, and unrelenting anti-aircraft fire. But eventually one made it through. And between 5:15 and 5:25 p.m., a German aircraft, piloted by Hans Dochtermann, released a glide bomb that would hit the Rohna on her port side. The Rohna was not equipped with the heavy armor necessary to withstand such an attack. The bomb had hit at about 15 feet above the waterline, but it caused severe damage. It flooded the engine room, knocked out all the electrical systems, including the pumps, and set the ship on fire. The explosion also destroyed the number 4 bulkhead, compromising the ship's structural integrity. As if that weren't bad enough, the blast wiped out 6 of the ship's 22 lifeboats and warped the hull so badly that the remaining port boats couldn't be lowered. Some of the troops attempted to cut the lifeboat ropes to try to launch them, but that just caused the boats to plunge into the water and quickly become swamped. In the end, only 8 boats were successfully launched, but they were overloaded with troops, and most either became waterlogged or capsized. Among the last to leave their ship was her captain, T.J. Murphy, along with the chief second and third officers and the senior medical officer, as well as 4 U.S. soldiers. This group stayed on the foredeck for about 30 minutes as the rest of the crew and soldiers abandoned ship. The USS Pioneer and the cargo ship Clan Campbell fell behind the convoy to rescue the survivors. They were provided a smokescreen and anti-aircraft cover by the HMS Atherstone, a Hunt-class destroyer. Due to its high freeboard, the Clan Campbell lowered a cargo net for survivors to use to scramble up the ship. The climb was about 30 feet and was tough for many of the exhausted survivors. While the wind was only force 4, a 15 to 20 foot swell made it impossible for the rescue ships to launch their own boats. As night fell, Atherstone shifted from providing anti-aircraft cover to helping with the rescue. And shortly after, the tugboat Mindful arrived from Bougie to assist. The rescue operation continued until 2:15 of the following morning. The survivors were then taken to Philippeville in Algeria. Of the 1,138 men killed, 1,015 of them were U.S. personnel, making it the largest loss of life of U.S. troops at sea in a single incident. In addition, 35 U.S. soldiers later died from their wounds. In total, 5 of Rohna's officers, 117 of her 195 crew members, and 1 of her 12 DEMS gunners, as well as 1 hospital orderly also perished in the tragic event. The U.S. government immediately classified all information about the Rohna sinking, primarily to keep German leaders from learning of the true effectiveness of their new weapon. As a result, the families of those lost received little to no information about their loved ones. The telegrams they would receive would simply say, "missing in action," with no information to follow, and that was all the government provided them. It wasn't until 24 years later in 1967 that the story of the Rohna would be quietly declassified. There was no public announcement, no update for the families, no memorials, and no recognition of the heroic efforts of the crew. Ultimately, the responsibility for preserving the memory of the disaster fell to the survivors and their families. Thus, the story remained largely hidden, with only a few notable mentions in newspaper articles discussing deaths throughout the war. That is until 1993, when John Fievet, a survivor, wrote an article titled "World War II's Secret Disaster" for American History magazine. His article sparked interest in the media and finally gave the survivors of Rohna the attention they deserved nearly 50 years after the events took place. The sinking of the HMT Rohna and the loss of over 1,000 American lives remains one of the darkest chapters of World War II. Shrouded in secrecy for decades, the survivors and families left in the dark for so long had to carry the burden of this tragedy alone. But the silence surrounding the Rohna disaster couldn't last forever. It took the persistence of survivors and the gradual unraveling of secrecy to finally bring the story to light. Today we remember those lost, not just for the scale of the tragedy, but for the way it was kept from the public eye for so long. The survivors' resilience, the heroism of those who fought to save others, and the lasting impact of the Rohna disaster remind us of the importance of acknowledging the full history of wartime sacrifice. Let's honor their memory and continue to ask, how many more stories like this are out there, waiting to be told? Thank you for watching.